The justices in this decision, the lower court said that there was no evidence of that, and the justices are saying, we don't see any either, and it's not our job to go and find out the facts. They are just flatly rejecting this appeal, and they are also, establishing again that the death penalty is constitutional.
Nothing quite like beginning your week with a little talk of gerrymandering, lethal injections, and filthy air that will choke the life out of you if you let it. In other words, just another Monday at the Supreme Court. Let's get to the latest from the men and women in black robes from the law offices of O'Brien and Ryan in Philadelphia. Welcome back our approved, battle-tested, and fearless legal eagle, Heather Hansen, joins us on the show. All right, Heather, we finally have some Supreme Court decisions to talk about here. My God, let's just go ahead and dig in here and begin with the lethal injection case that we just heard about, the appeal. Now, first of all, did you agree with the call?
I did agree with the call. I mean, the truth is that the death penalty is written within our Constitution. It's mentioned in a number of the amendments. And so therefore, it is something that has to be considered. And when there's no alternative, and that's what really it came down to in the decision today, that there's no alternative to using this drug, and that therefore it's not cruel and unusual punishment.
So then Justice Stephen Breyer writes, I would ask for a full briefing on a more basic question, whether the death penalty violates the Constitution. Isn't it, as far as your understanding, sort of clear?
Yeah, the thing is, Ed, many of us are against the death penalty. We think that it's unreasonable and we think that it is inhumane. But it is within the Constitution. And so when Justice Breyer calls for this, and Justice Bader Ginsburg joined him in this dissent, for them to call for this is really judicial activism at its finest. They are trying to overcome what the legislature has done, overcome what the people have done, and to themselves find that something is unconstitutional despite the fact that it's specifically written into the Constitution.
How do we then, though, get past the whole cruel and unusual punishment issue when you're talking about an experimental, untested drug? It's basically a cocktail. You say you're trying to end somebody's life without inflicting great suffering, yet they do have some evidence here that apparently it was used in a couple of instances, and they believe that the people involved suffered great agony.
And that's the problem. The courts were saying that you need to come up with an alternative that's less harmful. And as Justice Sotomayor said in her dissent, that there really isn't one. And that it's as if you're trying to ask, we're talking now in general about using things like the firing range and going back to those types of things because there really isn't any means by which to execute someone that is going to be humane, especially now that so many of the drug manufacturers that make the drugs that you can do this with refuse to make the types of drugs that you can use. So it really puts people who are trying to use the death penalty between a rock and a hard place.
Sort of lost in all this is the gerrymandering case here, the Supreme Court ruling that states can try to remove partisan politics from the process of drawing political maps. And there's a lot of people, specifically on the right, in Arizona and California, very upset by this. But my question would be is, Arizona and California, does the rest of the country now follow suit on this? Is this a template?
It could be. I mean, the court's saying that this is legal. I tend to agree with the dissent in that the Constitution specifically says that it's the legislature that's supposed to come up with these districts in the way that they're handled, and not sort of agents of the legislature, which is what the majority said. But it does mean that if other states decide, if the people decide that they want to give that job to someone other than the legislator, to different people who are appointed, that they can now under this case.
This still comes down to a regional issue more than anything else, so you believe maybe SCOTUS sort of overreached on this one?
I think that they did overreach if you're looking at the plain language of the Constitution, and I think that the dissent points that out very well. But the truth of the matter is it's now law, and so if other states decide that they want to put the district management into the hands of people other than the legislators, they will be within their rights to do so.
And the last one, ruling against the EPA on the power plant regulations, saying the agency unreasonably failed to consider the cost of the regulations. This is a defeat for the Obama administration, is it not?
It is, Ed, and this is the third case that sort of addresses the EPA regulations this year. The first two you could consider a win for the administration. This is the first one that really is a loss for the administration. Ultimately, it's not going to make a whole lot of difference because ultimately the legislators are going to have to go back. The regulators are going to have to go back and just show that they've considered costs and probably be able to get by with these regulations. All the court was saying is that costs are relevant. The EPA's position were the costs were irrelevant, and the court said, said, wait, hold on. Costs are relevant. So they have to consider costs. It doesn't say how. It doesn't say how to weigh them. It just says that they have to consider them.
They're not saying they disagree with the EPA trying to make cleaner air, however you want to slice it. They're just saying that if you're going to do it and regulate it, then you need to make sure that people can afford it.
Right, that there has to be a cost-benefit analysis. You can't just look at the benefits and ignore the fact that it may cost companies, it may cost states a lot of money, here billions of dollars.
And we have industry groups, 21 Republican-led states. They brought the challenge, right, and they're going to be happy, and this will continue. I guarantee that one. Heather, always a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you so much. We'll talk a little law with you again next week.
Great to be here, Ed. Have a great day.
All right, take care. Have a great week. Coming up next, the latest example. You want to talk about money here for a second. The latest example of a college football program out of control. And something we've seen so many times before, the shrugging of boosters' shoulders that goes with it. LSU is in the crosshairs. Next on MidPoint.